Welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Selesnya Value, and we are running up against Rakdos Hollow One, not unlike the deck that we covered on the series a few weeks back. This is our opening hand. This isn't a very good hand, obviously filled with lands, doesn't do anything until turn 3, so looking to mulligan this. So this is considerably better. We've got a turn 1 Hierarch, potentially into a turn 2 Knight or even Mind Sensor, so yeah, this looks good as our 6. In the dark we have a top of deck Path to Exile. I'm going to bottom this. I mean, it's obviously Path is a good card, but in the dark it's not exactly advancing our hand much, and I don't think it's particularly what we want to draw. I mean, obviously that depends heavily on what our opponent is playing, but I think in general we probably don't want to be drawing that. It's not a terribly exciting card for us, unless our opponent plays something that demands immediate removal, which hopefully they don't, but as I say, we weren't aware of what was going on at this moment in time, so we're just going to lead off with Temple Garden into Hierarch. I mean, yeah, the likelihood was we were going to fetch anyway with the lands we had, otherwise we're taking 1 life from a Horizon Canopy, which seems a bit unnecessary. Yeah, I suppose that scry wasn't hugely important anyway. Opponent goes Bloodstained Mire into Blood Crypt into Lightning Bolt your Noble Hierarch, which is interesting. Still not entirely sure what our opponent's on. Obviously red-black's something, but the Lightning Bolt kind of threw me off. So yeah, we don't really have anything to do on turn 2, unfortunately, thanks to Hierarch dying. Opponent Faithless Looting is putting a Bloodghast, a Prized Amalgam, and a Faithless Looting into play. Prized Amalgam is the interesting card here. Didn't play it when I was playing Rakdos. It's actually quite greedy, to be quite honest, because as far as I'm aware, the only card they actually play in the deck list that comes back from the graveyard is Bloodghast. So you're relying on getting Bloodghast into your graveyard along with Prized Amalgam to actually recur it. They don't play blue mana, as far as I can tell. So that's literally the only thing that you can do with Prized Amalgam is get it back from your graveyard by bringing back a Bloodghast, which is, as I say, a little bit on the greedy side. I think we played Flamewake Phoenix in our deck, but this is certainly interesting. It's obviously more powerful when it comes off, as it is about to, but it is a risky one and slightly greedy, as I say. So our opponent then plays a land. Let's make his Bloodghast, triggers the Amalgam to come back end of turn. Another Faithless Looting, discarding a Burning Inquiry and a land. And our opponent has 2 Hollow Ones. So yeah, this is not looking great for us. Our opponent's turn 2 is pretty insane. He's going to cycle a Street Wraith as well. Yeah, and that's the end of his turn. So yeah, so our opponent's now got a Prized Amalgam, 2 Hollow Ones, and a Bloodghast in play. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 points of damage coming our way, which is not great for us. We draw a fetch land, which is definitely useful for us. So we're going to get a basic land, and obviously to conserve our life total. And we're going to play out the Knight here, which is the biggest card we can play. So next turn we're looking at blocking the Prized Amalgam. We can take 10, which obviously isn't good, and we are then in a position where our Knight can kill off the Hollow Ones because we can block and then use its ability to find a land. So it will outsize the Hollow Ones shortly, but we kind of have to hope we don't die in the meantime, which might be a problem. So our opponent's going to attack with everything. We're going to block the Prized Amalgam. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have any removal to actually kill off our Knight. But yeah, we go down to 6. Opponent plays a Faithless Looting, which I don't think hits anything. Plays a land. And Oh, I think he plays an angler here. Yeah, so the opponent has an angler. So yeah, things are not going great for us. Our opponent's players have just been pretty insane, really. His turn 2 was pretty crazy. His turn 3, he's still got action going in the form of angler. Again, knight can outside angler, but not just yet. So it looks like we're probably going to have to chump that. And chumping is generally the call of the day, really. So we can Eternal Witness, get back a Noble Hierarch, which is another chump blocker. We draw on a Bop, which is quite good actually, because really at the moment we're kind of looking to trade anything that the knight blocks and then chump with everything else and hope for the best. But Faithless Lootings again, discarding a Street Wraith and a Burning Inquiry. So block here, chump the biggest threats, and we're going to be able to kill off one of the hollow ones here by using the knight's ability. Wasn't entirely sure which land to get here. I mean, Township's not really going to do anything for us. Ghost Quad doesn't really do anything, so I think it's best just to get a fetch land. It's maybe a little bit risky with our Life's Hold, but it's hard to get a fetch. It means that we can grow the knight slightly bigger and gives us slightly more options. We're going to have 3 here. Which actually makes it a bit more risky getting the fetch land. I'm not sure whether I should have got the fetch land. Maybe I should have just got a basic instead. I believe it works out for us though, because we draw a Corsair, which is nice. So we can play the Corsair, crack the fetch, which is sort of even on life, and then the activating the knight will give us. Oh, that's even better actually. Yeah, so activating the knight will give us a life gain from the Corsair. We find the land on top, which is useful. So we can go up to 3 here, thanks to the land we played. Then we're going to crack a land so we can find a basic forest. Well, it'll be parity on life, but obviously allows us to play the Hierarch, so we've got 3 blockers. So we can block all of our opponent's creatures. And then we're just going to leave the other wooded foothills as is for now. As it stands, we've got Corsair on top. I think despite the fact we shuffled our library, we managed to end up with a Corsair on top. So that's good. Also, potentially, it means if we don't crack this fetch, we can play a Corsair and actually gain life from cracking a fetch land, which would be pretty nice. Opponent's going to Faithless Looting with Flashback. Dropping anything relevant? No, nothing relevant entered the graveyard at that point. Let's get attack with everything, so we are looking at killing off the Angler. We will kill off the Bloodghast with the Corsair, and then chump the hollow one with a Noble Hierarch. Putting the Bloodghast into our opponent's graveyard does mean that he might be able to get back this prized amalgam if he has a land, so that is part of the risk, but overall this is pretty good for us. We get the Angler off the board, we can avoid taking any damage from the Bloodghast while keeping our Corsair on board, and we just are left with the hollow one as it stands, but as I say, opponent's going to be able to get back his Bloodghast and the prized amalgam, so we're back to 3 creatures on our opponent's side of the board, but we're going to be able to play a 3rd creature next turn. We're going to be able to gain at least 2 life. Actually, yeah, so I could have searched with the knight there and gained an extra life, but I thought it was better to draw this Corsair, because obviously that means we then have a good creature to cast. It also means that all our land drops are going to be able to gain us 2 life. We have another courser on top, but I don't think we're going to have the ability to wait for that. Our opponent's last play is another angler, which is pleasant. So we're definitely fighting against a pretty heavy tide from our opponent. Yeah, so our opponent's Bloodghast is most likely to get through next turn. Fortunately, we have enough life that's okay, and as I say, we can gain a life from cracking this wooded foothills, and also if we activate the Knight, we'll gain 2 life off of that, so we can certainly deal with that. Maybe should have cracked the land there, just in case our opponent drew Lightning Bolt. Though I suppose... Yeah, I think probably the right play would have been to play to crack the fetch on our turn when our opponent's tapped out, because if he draws Lightning Bolt, then we're forced into using the Knight activation to save us, and then we only have 2 blockers and our opponent kills us. So maybe that was what we should have done there, just to be on the safe side. Fortunately, our opponent doesn't have a Lightning Bolt. He's going to flashback and the Faithless Looting, importantly dropping Driven and Despair into his graveyard, so he can use Despair to give all his creatures Menace. Not currently, but that might be coming our way, so that's just something to keep in mind. We're going to attack with everything, so our best blocks are to kill off the Angler. We can block the Prized Amalgam, and obviously those two just bounce off each other, and then we're going to be forced to trade our second Courser. So I'm going to activate the Knight, which is going to find us another fetch land, which obviously we can get 1 life off of each fetch land, so we might as well get the fetches going. So crack the fetch, get a Temple Garden so we avoid drawing it, and then because that's not particularly useful. That gives us 2 life. We find a Knight on top, so we can crack the other fetch and gain an extra 2 life, but I'm quite keen on playing this Knight, as it's obviously going to be very substantial in size, and then cause our opponent quite a lot of problems, most likely. So that's what I go for. Maybe that's a questionable call, but I quite like the idea of drawing Knight here. I think knowing that I wasn't actually overly aware of Driven and Despair and what this card did, so maybe knowing that our decision would have been changed, but maybe not. Additionally, basically we need 4 creatures next turn, and it works out that we actually are able to do that, but we have to get a little bit lucky because we have to get a land on top, which we do. Is a Horizon Canopy though, which means it's going to cost us life, but we're able to run out the Knight here, and then we've got 2 8/8s and a 2/4. Opponent plays Despair, so yeah, as I say, he's got Menace on all of his guys, and also when they deal damage they make me discard a card, which isn't overly relevant at the moment. But he's going to attack here, presumably thinks he's won, as he is probably not expecting a flashed in Aven Mind Sensor, but that is how it works out. So fortunately we can block the big guys. We're going to lose the Aven Mind Sensor to the Hollow One, but we are going to be able to save our Courser by blocking with the Prized Amalgam. So we'll have 3 creatures end of this. We'll take 2, and we can gain some life off Knight activations to prevent ourselves from going too low. So we can do another Knight activation if we want. It's not immediately necessary, so I don't bother with it, but we can activate the Knight again and gain 1 extra life to go to 3. But as that doesn't really play around anything, I didn't bother to do that. And end of turn, our opponent has another Angler. but I think that actually is game as it stands. Yeah, so yeah, our opponent concedes there, and that's the game. So yeah, obviously our opponent had a blocker, but our knights are now 10-10s, and all we need to do is put one more card into the land card into the graveyard, and we'll be able to attack for 13. We could actually attack for 13 with just one of these knights, actually, if we so desired, but it's yeah, our opponent can't stop our attack here, and yeah, we managed to pick up the win in a kind of the most unlikely of circumstances. Very grindy, very close to dying on several occasions, and if our opponent had found a bolt at any point, I think we would have been most likely dead. But yeah, at the same time, our opponent had a very insane set of plays, and we managed to bounce back from it and actually take the game, which was pretty impressive. So yeah, let's get on to the sideboarding. Okay, so we're here with the sideboard. There's not a ton we have against Rakdos, Hollow One, or really Dredge, to be honest. We don't really have a ton of graveyard hate. I mean, we've got main deck Scavenging Ooze, which is probably the best card we have. After that, we were looking at... I brought in Surgical Extraction to memory. Obviously, if we can hit Bloodghast with this, that turns off all his prized amalgams, and generally makes his life that much more difficult. As I say, leaves him with 4 dead cards in terms of prized amalgam, which we'll never be able to return, at least as far as I'm aware, based on what I've seen of the deck. Alternatively, we could get rid of Faithless Looting as well, I suppose, and that obviously limits the ability to discard cards into the graveyard, and makes his life a little bit more difficult again. Then we've got, I believe I've got in Reclamation Stage, just as an answer to Hollow One. Basically, it's a Necrotile against the Hollow One. There's not a lot of other targets, obviously, but if you hold on to it, then we can use that to kill off a Hollow One. And again, I might have brought in Quasoli Pride Mage. I'm not sure. It's one of these two. I'm not sure if you need both. Again, but that's probably about it for our sort of our sideboarding. Not a lot of cards to bring in. Definitely want our removal in terms of Path to Exile, to get rid of their cards, and obviously it exiles them so they can't return them. Even Mind Sensor, not so great, not so useful. Azusa, again, not so great, not so useful. Can't block a Bloodghast profitably, so probably want to get rid of those. Scavenging is very good. Voice of Resurgence is probably not at its best, but it can provide you with 2 blockers, which is certainly useful. Tireless Tracker, I think, is probably the other card I took out, I think. Again, doesn't block Bloodghast profitably, and its abilities are all kind of slow against this sort of very fast, aggressive deck that we're playing against. So I don't really think we're going to have the time to be making clues and cracking them, etc. So yeah, I think those were the cards I brought out. Surgical Extraction, Reclamation Stage, Pride Mage in, Aven Mind Sensor, Azusa, and a Tireless Tracker out. So we're back here with game 2. This is our opening hand. I end up keeping this. I don't know whether that's right or wrong. I mean, it's not the best of hands, but it does have a turn 1 ramp in terms of the Noble Hierarch into a Excavator, which is decent. Yeah, I mean, we certainly don't have our hate cards in here, although we don't have a ton of great hate cards anyway. But I think this hand it's okay. As it turns out, our opponent leads, well, actually first he leads with a Leyline of the Void, which is interesting. I'd like to think our deck's quite resilient to graveyard hate, but it kind of isn't, I suppose. We are a little bit weak to graveyard hate. It makes Knight of the Reliquary a lot worse, obviously never growing beyond the 2/2, which certainly hurts. Excavator, as I say, which we've got in hand, is not as good. It doesn't really do anything. It's just a 2/3 if you can't play your lands from your graveyard. So yeah, in quite a few ways, graveyard hate does hurt this deck. So it's not like a killer, but it is certainly a pain. It certainly makes our cards a lot weaker. So yeah, opponent leads with Burning Inquiry, which means we both draw 3 cards and discard them at random. So actually improves my hand somewhat, as we end up discarding 3 lands and drawing a Hierarch and a Knight. But as I say, Knight is somewhat neutered. Our opponent then cycles 2 Street Wraiths and plays a Hollow One on turn 1. We're kind of hoping that our opponent won't have anything too crazy to play. I mean, that's not the most insane that he could have done, but we don't currently have an answer to Hollow One, so that is going to cause us a problem. So we're going to lead with Noble Hierarch. Our opponent's going to be able to attack us for 4 here, and fortunately doesn't have any follow-ups. Just Avenues, which is very good here. Probably the best card we have in this matchup. I enthusiastically run it out, but kind of regret it very shortly thereafter. We should have just left Scavenging Ooze until we had the ability to play it and activate twice. So we could have played it next turn and had the ability to activate twice. Opponent's already got 3 creatures in the graveyard, an Angler and 2 Street Wraiths. So we have all the necessaries to be able to do that. We maybe even wanted to wait a turn longer than that. But yeah, basically we've opened up our Scavenging Ooze to Lightning Bolt, which unfortunately our opponent does have. So yeah, I kind of regretted playing that after I did it. Probably should just played Courser or something else, basically, and then we can either decide to chump or leave it hanging back. And then obviously wait to generate the mana that we need to get the Scavenging Ooze going. Yeah, I definitely regret that, and Scavenging Ooze could have taken over the game. We probably should have waited on it. Fortunately, an answer comes in the form of this Path to Exile, so we can get rid of our opponent's threatening Hollow One. Just going to lead with the Courser, which then means we can play this Temple Garden and only take 1 life from using it. Untapped. Opponent's going to play Blood Moon, which is kind of interesting. I actually don't think Blood Moon's good against us. At first I questioned Ley Isle in the Void, but it's actually pretty smart. Our deck does have a bit of a weakness to Graveyard Hate, as I mentioned. Blood Moon I don't really get. I don't think it's really the kind of card he wants to be bringing in. Obviously turns off our utility lands. We can't use Gavany Township now. Ghost Quarter doesn't really work very effectively against our opponent anyway, so it's not too much of a downer. We can't use our fetch lands in the way we normally do, but now that there's no graveyards, that's not so much a big of a deal. So yeah, I'm kind of mixed feelings about our opponent playing Blood Moon. It doesn't really do anything against us, so it's kind of fine. We've got a Noble Hierarch in play. We've also got basic forests, so our access to our colours isn't really limited by him playing a Blood Moon. Basically all it does is turn off our utility lands, which again, other than Gavany Township, we haven't really got a ton of use for in this matchup, and Gavany Township is a bit slow in general for this matchup. So yeah, I'm happy enough with our opponent playing Blood Moon here. We're actually able to tap and path his guy, which irritatingly gives him mana to hardcast a Bloodghast because he can fetch up a swamp, but I still think it's the right thing to do in the circumstances. And yeah, as I say, I query how good Blood Moon is against our deck. We've got a lot of basics. It's not really seeing us off our colours, and it doesn't do a whole lot. So yeah, fairly happy with that situation. I attacked for 3 hit. I should have played my Noble Hierarch first. I think I had some ideas about playing a Knight of the Reliquary. But yeah, should have played the Hierarch first and attacked for 4 there, but never mind. So we're going to play the Excavator and the Hierarch here. Opponent plays a Faithless Looting, flashes back a Faithless Looting, cycles a Street Wraith. He puts Bloodghast and the Prized Amalgam into the graveyard, but fortunately for us, we get a bit of luck on our side, and our opponent doesn't have the land to play immediately, so he's not able to get back the Bloodghast and the Amalgam just yet. Get a land on top, so we're just going to play that, gain life. We're going to attack for 4 here with the Excavator, and then we can keep back Corsair to block, because either way we would have been attacking for 4. And we're also drawn into Collected Company, which our opponent knows about. So he gets to bring back his Bloodghast, which is going to trigger his prized Amalgam, and I think he has a Angler as well. But at this point our opponent's on 6, he only has 1 blocker, and we're about to Collected Company, so we should be able to get enough power. So yeah, we get Corsair and a Voice off of the Collected Company. So we have enough power to kill our opponent through his blocker. But as it stands anyway, we're going to draw this Path to Exile, so we can path the Angler and get through with ease. Yeah, even if our opponent had some sort of removal or Lightning Bolt or something in his hand, we wouldn't end up too badly off on blockers. Also, we'd have a Voice, so I guess we'd get a Voice token if our opponent did Lightning Bolt at instant speed. And we also have the ability to cast one of these Knights to block as well. So yeah, we were pretty safe, and this worked out pretty well. This was a hell of a match. I really enjoyed it. Game 1 was pretty insane, and we managed to drag it back from the very depths, despite all our opponent's insane plays. And Game 2 kind of worked out a little bit stranger. Our opponent didn't really get too much going, and we were sort of able to stabilise once we removed the Hollow 1 from the board. His turn 1 Hollow 1. As I say, we kind of misplayed the Scavenging Muse, I think, but kind of worked out in the end, thanks to drawing that Path to Exile, which managed to deal with his 1 threat, and then we were just able to stabilise the board from there and finish this one up.